Hi, I'm Shan Turner-Carroll and we're at MRAG, Maitland Regional Art Gallery, and welcome to my show, Bodies on a Rock. Bodies on a Rock is an exhibition of new and existing work. The existing work is a series of photographs that that document a performative gesture or a performative work that I did in New York. The piece started on my rooftop of my apartment in Brooklyn, and with a mirror in hand, I reflected the first rays of the morning sun. And for the next 12 hours, continued to follow the sun from sunrise to sunset, from Brooklyn, through Brooklyn, over Brooklyn Bridge, from the east side to the west side of Manhattan, and dropped the sun off at sunset. And then I turned and I caught the moon in the mirror, and then I continued to follow the moon through the night. And then the piece finished the next morning when I caught the sun in the reflection on my rooftop again, 24 hours later. The new work that I made for this exhibition, I started developing it on a residency in Iceland. I spent 3 months in a small town called Site-specificity, and I did the residency with a school called Lunga School. It was an experimental art school and extremely influential on this particular body of work. So when I first got to Iceland, I was traveling to the school and I went to a glacier and I found a stone and I picked it up. And from this action, this sort of sparked an inquiry for me, or an interest in questioning my relationship to this landscape. So within questioning my act of taking this rock, this opened up a can of worms, and I started questioning more of these sort of inherited models of the universe that I live by, or that I sort of experience the world in. I was very aware of that I was not from this land, and I became very aware of my actions and my movements and my body. And so with I think the 12 other students at the school, I developed around 6 to 10 short little films. And a lot of the films were involving the body and apparatuses that sort of were extensions of the bodies, and how they related to the environment and the landscape. When you think about Iceland, you think of like glaciers and waterfalls and green glowing skies, but a lot of the films took place in car parks and swimming pools that were old holding cells, and basketball courts. So for me, I was still seeing these areas, or these places as these were still the landscape, extensions of the landscape. In the town that I was at, there's these big boulders, and it was really interesting for me because the positioning of them, it wasn't like necessarily a design, a choice based on design. And I sort of asked around, and the town was built around the boulders. And so when I think about that in comparison to like towns in Australia where trees are chopped down or boulders are moved, this was an interesting sort of relationship that the locals had with their land and with their landscape. So I spent about 3 months making these rocks, and it was a really interesting relationship watching these slowly turn from polystyrene to plaster and then carved and then hand painted, and to see them slowly evolve and get to those moments where the rock turns into a rock. Like, it's those moments when is it enough, and when does it transform from these things into this other thing? I wasn't so much interested in sort of impressing people with my skill of making a rock, but it was very much more, I became really interested in the moment when you realize that it's not a rock. In not wanting to overly analyze my work or overly explain it, I chose not to have an artist statement, and I asked a good friend and artist to write a little bit about the work. And she has also been to the residency in Iceland at Lunga. So I'd like to share a piece that she wrote about the work that I produced there. Severance from the animal earth. It starts with the impulse to take the rock, then a questioning. Who am I to this rock? How does it see me? How do I see it? Am I other to it? What follows is the unraveling of a web. In the unraveling, I see how culture and history influence my experience of the world around me more strongly than I can know. Questioning my impulses means questioning my ideas of the world, which means questioning my place in the world, which means questioning the language I use to understand the world, which means questioning the logic I use to make sense of the world. What does it mean to make sense? Making is newness. By combination, causation, compulsion, so making sense is a fabrication, the overlaying of knowledge, interpretation through the lens of language, a language adopted and learned from generations of sense makers. Pure sense must come before the making of. What about sense action and the world before the making sense? How can I access that world? What if, with practice, my body can sensorially enter those worlds within worlds of which I have become disassociated? To find the prior sense, I have to identify the made sense. The structure, I start to use objects as blueprints, maps, symbols of the knowledge, the sense-making. I navigate their objecthood like landscape, abstracting the reality I subscribe to. I ride with my severance from the animal earth in the hopes that I may glimpse a crack, an opening, a scratch on the made sense. Thank you for listening, and I'd love it if you'd come along to Maitland Regional Gallery to come and see the show and see other people's work that's here as well. That would be really amazing.